What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today we're taking a look at a new high-end headphone from Austrian Audio called the Composer. Let's check it out. So the Composer is a high-end premium reference headphone from Austrian Audio, and this is actually not their first headphone that they have made. They've got several other headphones they've made in the past. They've done microphones, but none of the headphones have gone over the $400 mark. So they went all in with the Composer because this one comes in at $2,699. Now, before I get further into all that, I do want to send a big thank you out to Audio 46, who did send out the Composer in exchange for all of my thoughts and all of my opinions. And guys, please do check out Audio 46 online. They sell a ton of audio products, from headphones, IEMs, DACs, and amps, you name it. They also have a storefront in the New York area. If you are there, I highly recommend checking them out. All right, so let's quickly discuss the driver of the Composer, because this is their own Hi-X driver design. In fact, it is called Hi-X49 DLC. Now, the DLC stands for diamond-like carbon that is a coating on the diaphragm. Now, the drivability of this headphone is 22 ohms of impedance and 112 dB of sensitivity. So this, on paper and in practice, is a very easy to drive headphone. It's very efficient. So you could honestly power this straight out of a laptop, a phone, something like that. You don't even really need an amp. However, I do recommend an amp, and we'll talk about that as we get into the sound section. But first, I do want to take a look at what you get when you buy the Composer, because you do get more than just the headphone inside the box. So when you open up this very nice wood case, you are met with the Composer headphone right away. It is pad side down because there is complete cup swivel from the headphone, and then you see this nice accessory box that has a nice red bow around it. I don't know, just a nice little added touch that's got your accessories inside the box, which is really the cables that are inside the box. Now let's talk about that really quick, because that will kind of segue me into talking to you about the build and the unique design of the headphone. So the cables, you get three of them. First of all, there is one 1.4 meter cable that is a 4.4 balance cable. You're going to get a XLR balance cable that is 3 meters long, and then you're going to get a 3.5 unbalanced cable that is also 3 meters long that comes with a 6.3 adapter. Pretty typical for cables to come with that. Now, the unique part about that is the connection to the cups. It is a banana plug connection that goes on the side of the cups. This is not something we've seen before in other headphones, and it is unique. And I don't know if I mean that in a good or a bad way. It's just unique. So with that, guys, let's talk about the build of the headphone next. Let's start with the cup itself. So taking a look at this, you're going to notice, first of all, right away, you will notice that this is a very mesh grill on the outside of the cup, and it's very open. So as you can imagine, these things leak sound like there's nobody's business, but they're open back, so that's kind of to be expected when it comes to that. Now, these do have full cup swivel, as I said, but there's something else very unique going on here on the cup. You're going to see this little red dot here and then these notches. Now, this is actually a tilt system so that you can tilt the cup in order to get a different fit on your head. And I will talk about that when I talk about the comfort, so you understand what they are trying to accomplish with that. But it's very different. Like the banana plug adapter on the cups is very different. Now, this is purposeful, of course. Austrian Audio's own connection, and they did this so that there was no added weight or wear on the bottom of the cup, which, to be honest, I've never even thought of that as a thing, other than the fact that when I hang it on a stand, I don't have to worry about the cables dragging down here or the connector hitting the bottom of a table if it's on a stand, because they're coming out of the cup. So I guess in that aspect, I'm okay with that. Now, continuing on as we go and look at the band itself, you are going to notice one piece of plastic that is on this headphone, and I'm still not sure if I like the idea, but it is what it is, and that is the adjustment mechanism on the headphone. And this adjusts up and down. That kind of, to me, sounds kind of like a zip tie would when you adjust a zip tie. I don't care about that, but it is plastic. And on a $2,700 headphone. I kind of wish it wasn't plastic, but it is. It's solid plastic and it feels solid. I'll give them that. Now the band up here up top, again, I don't know the exact material of this. It feels carbon fiber, but don't quote me on that because it could be a different type of metal. Underneath that, you're going to see the mesh padding for the headband itself. And then there is a leather-like material for the padding. It's pretty thin, but it's comfortable. I will say it doesn't need to be extra thick. And the mesh is definitely purposeful there. You know, they've done that to make this so it breathes on your head easy enough so you don't get any kind of hot spots or things like that going. So I do like the thought they put in for the headband. Now, flipping over the cups is a different story. So the pads themselves, these are the same shape all the way around. These are not angled pads, anything like that. They're a leather-like material. They are soft and cushiony. I definitely like that. They're not perforated, so these will get a little bit warm when you are wearing them over time. But the thing I really like about the pads is they're magnetized. And this is one of the easiest swap systems I have seen on a headphone when it comes to pad swapping. I mean, just, I could even, don't even have to look at the headphone and I can do it. So it is super easy. And you're going to notice that on the pads, they are completely just the pad. There is no like material in the middle here going on. But when you take them off, you'll see this foam. And it's got a big L or a big R, depending on the cup, of course. And it's an angled foam. Obviously, it's got a purpose for the sound reproduction. But I'm still not quite sure if I'm okay with this big piece of foam on here without knowing the full reasoning behind it. Of course, you know, we can deduce that this definitely helps with the sound, whether it makes them not so bright, not so harsh. I'm not exactly sure. To be honest, I wish Austrian Audio gave us full transparency of the usage of the foam. How did they come to this design? It's angled, so obviously they must have gone through different iterations of it to make the sound produce how they wanted it to from the driver. But to put so much thought into the driver and then not talk about the foam, to me is a miss for the consumer. But I digress. I'll move on from that because we are going to talk about sound here very soon. But just note that it is a comfortable headphone. I will say that. What concerns me, though, is when I got this out of the box, I put it on my head and it fit. That's not concerning for me because I wanted it to fit, but I didn't have to adjust it at all. And I don't exactly have a tiny head. I don't think I have a humongous melon, but I definitely don't have a tiny head. And the fact that I didn't have to adjust this made me worry a little bit about somebody with a small head being able to fit this headphone. So I had my wife try these on, Brie. And sorry, guys, I didn't record it when I had her try it on. I don't think she wanted me to be honest. And that is what the cup tilt is all about. So you are able to tilt these, and what that will do is will make them adjust further down. So when you're wearing them on your head, the cups will be facing a different direction, of course, instead of up and down, but it will tighten the fit up top. And she did that and it worked just fine. My concern there, quite honestly, though, is seal, because, you know, your head's going to be a different shape this way than it is this way. So I would be concerned about that. And the fact that the pads are not round. They are more like a, I don't know, cylinder shape or something like that is what I would call them. So as you rotate them, I am a little bit concerned about getting a solid seal. Now, it may be fine for somebody else. I'm not quite sure, but that is something to note. These weigh 385 grams. I forgot to mention that. They are very comfortable. I'm just a little concerned for those small heads out there, how this is going to fit you, even with that cup swivel or cup tilt, I should say. Now with that, guys, let's talk about the sound. All right, and so before I discuss the sound of this, I should tell you the different amps that I used and what I preferred the most. Now you can use a phone, laptop, or a computer with this and be perfectly fine because it is so easy to drive. But I personally think if you're spending this kind of money, you should have some type of amp to power this headphone just to give you a better sound quality, in my opinion. And so for that, I used something as simple as the Schiit Midgard and got an excellent sound quality out of this headphone. Now I did use the Endlium HBA that I'm currently working on for a video. As you can imagine, that was a fantastic sound as well for a solid state, and probably most of my listen was on the Endlium. And then I also listened on my Cayin HA-3A for a tube scenario. That was an excellent sound, and for portable, the Mojo 2, or my Cayin RU7. Quite honestly, all of them sounded great with some minor variations between each other amongst those. So what I can tell you about the sound is, even though they are calling this a reference headphone, to me, reference kind of means boring sometimes. This is not boring. Mid-range, I would call it neutral and reference, so I'll give it that there. And I think that's actually good to have mid-range in that case. The low end, though, it does extend very low and it extends flat. So you get a nice bass response that's not overpowering. And then the treble, this is the first time I've heard a treble that was both detailed and relaxed at the same time. That is a hard thing to do. Of course, I got to think that foam plays a big part in that. And so let's dissect this a little bit further. And let's start with that low end and talk about that. Hi guys, really quick, if I could grab your attention, I wanted to let you know I am trying to reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and I also have a Patreon if you'd like to support the channel there as well. I would highly appreciate that, and I will let you get back to the video. The low end has an excellent extension. Now, I don't know how low it goes, but it goes pretty damn low, to be honest, and flat. And so you get a nice textured bass response. I wouldn't call it overly thick, but it's thick enough to give you good presence there for really all genres of music, in my opinion. But I do have some track examples. First track is called Confession by Alesso, and to go along with that one is the track Schiphol Test by Underworld. These two tracks are electronic tracks, and both are a little bit different. Now, the second one that I listed is very fast, and this headphone is very fast. For this type of driver, I was very surprised to see just how fast of a sound this driver could produce. And I know people out there are probably thinking, what are you talking about fast? If music is fast, it's fast. If it's not fast, it's not fast. I'm talking about how quickly notes hit and move on to the next. And this has a lot of good rhythm to go along with that. So those bass notes that are hitting fast, that's what I'm talking about. They're on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. So that means it's not overfilling the space of reverb and things like that of the bass response. It's just a tight bass response is what I'm getting out of it. And I love that sound. And there's some impact too there in case you haven't figured that out yet by what I've said. Now, another track that I want to talk about is the track Redrum by 21 Savage. Now, this hip hop track has that pulsating, like get your head moving type bass, and it handles it really well in this headphone and can take to some volume. You just got to be careful with that without rattling or anything like that, which I loved about this. And it's going to give you the same quality without being overly done or without getting out of control with the driver. Now, of course, don't listen that loud. I do that in very short spurts just to see how the driver handles, and it handled it excellent in my opinion with the bass response. And so for me, this is not a boomy bass. It is not something that is going to be a bass head's dream, but it's not 800S bass either. And if you've listened to that headphone, you know what I'm talking about. This has good bass response and fast bass response and impactful bass response. Let's move on. Talk about that neutral, boring mid-range. All right, and so with that neutral and boring mid-range, I want to tell you guys about Friday Night Special by Gogo Penguin. This track has a lot of instruments, and this showcases instrument separation beautifully with this headphone. It does it in a very effortless way as well, in my opinion, and there's layering there. I think the imaging is excellent. I know we're kind of getting into some of the treble, but this also goes along with that, in my opinion, with the mid-range. You know, there's drums and things that are going through this track, and they just have this pop to them. It's really hard to describe as I'm trying to describe this to you, but it just has that dynamic pop that is not necessarily, I don't think I'd call it a punch. That's why I call it a pop. I hope that kind of makes sense to you because it's not that hard, but it's just a fast hard. Man, that was so terrible to describe just now, but I hope you kind of followed along with what I'm trying to say there. But there is another track I definitely want to bring up, and that is called Below by Leprous. I probably said their name wrong, but this is actually a metal band that was recommended by a friend to check them out, and I listened to this song, and I love this track for his vocals. He has beautiful vocals, in my opinion, and it is so warm on this headphone. and just involves you, but not in a way that it's pushed forward or anything like that. It's surrounding, not surrounding way out here, but in your space. And you hear the rest of the music. So like I said, it's got that layering of the mid-range there. And Adele and Norah Jones, people that can have some shout or some sibilance to their voice, it is tamed on this. It has a softness. Some people may not like that. They may think that as lack of clarity. I don't. It's just a softness to the ends of tones that is a pleasing listen, but is still discerning and still something you can analytically pick out. If somebody has some sibilance, you'd be able to say, I can hear it, but it's not shining through in this headphone like some can be on other headphones. Now, with that, guys, I want to segue that in and talk about the treble response next. And so treble is where I could see people loving this or being a little disappointed by this, because it is a tamed treble. It is not dark because there are plenty of details going on here. There is some effortless crispiness to the treble that I haven't honestly heard that before on a headphone. I would say the tungsten double-sided is close, but just effortless. It's just a nice representation of the treble for string instruments, for guitars that go really up high in the registry. Electric guitars come to mind here, that it's just not stabby at all. It's just a nice, plucky, pleasant sound of treble. There is a track I want to bring up, and it's called Regen by Florian Christl. And this track I've talked about before. It is a very piano-ish, string type track. This is an example of what I would say where I think at times there is a very slight haze to the treble. It's not bad, but again, this is something that could bother some people. I don't call this recessed or anything in the treble region, and I definitely wouldn't call this a veil. And I think it's because it's tamed so well, I would imagine again by the foam that's put on the drivers, that it is pleasant sounding, and I think that's going to cater to a lot of people, especially if you're susceptible to sibilance and just stabbiness of treble and you don't like brightness at all. I could see a lot of people just really gravitating toward this headphone for its treble response. But if you're looking for those really pinpointed details and don't mind some brightness, it's not going to have that because of, like I said, that slight little bit of haziness that I find that goes on with this. Also, along with that, I don't think of this headphone as overly wide. I think it's a good natural representation of stage. It's not intimate. When I listened on my Cayin HA-3A or the Enlium and I had the Mojo 2 or something like that, I definitely got a bigger sense of stage, but it didn't feel unnatural. And that's where I think that reference title of this headphone is very aptly named. Like I talked about with voices just being so effortless and soft, I think this headphone does all of that extremely well. And so with that, guys, let's talk about a couple of quick comparisons and wrap this one up. And so for my headphone comparisons, I hope you guys understand why I chose these. One, because I own them, but two, I think they kind of are similar in sound and something I could easily A/B. One was my Aria Organic and the other one is my ZMF O-Tour Classic. Now, both of those are about $1,000 less than this headphone. I get that, but the Organic has been praised by so many, myself included, for just the organic nature of the sound. What I would say the difference between this, no surprise, the Organic is brighter, but it is a little bit more crispier in that treble region. And when I talked about that haziness, just a little bit of haziness with this headphone, the Organic does not have that. Where I think this one wins out, though, is pretty much everything else in the treble response. The details, the speed. I mean, this just has like crazy speed, to be honest, for a headphone like this. And I think as far as bass response goes, the Organic is a little bit boomier, but I think this one actually will go down deeper as well. Kind of reminds me again of the tungsten double-sided in that regard. And then the O-Tour Classic. Now that one definitely doesn't have the bass response of this one. It does have an excellent mid-range in my opinion, but it does have some aggression into the upper mid-range of that headphone. And then the treble, again, I put it somewhere in between this one and the Organic because it's not as bright as the Organic, but it's also not as smooth and tame as this one. Like I said, somewhere in between, if that kind of helps you understand the sound I'm getting out of this headphone. I wish I still had the tungsten double-sided so I could A/B the two of these because I could go off just my notes. But this one's pretty close to my audio memory of how that treble response is on the tungsten, I honestly would give the edge to the tungsten though on the right amp. If I'm being truthful, which I'm being truthful, that's what I would tell you. All right, and so kind of wrap this up. I gotta say, when I first picked up this headphone, I wasn't very thrilled to try it out when I saw some of the build choices, design choices, the cable choices, but after I put it on my head and hit that play button, I was honestly very pleasantly surprised, and still am pleasantly surprised on just how good this headphone sounds. It's not cheap, it's $2,700, so I understand that, but the details that you get out of this, the fact that it is not going to be bright and strident to many people, it's got a decent low end to it so that you're not felt like you're wanting more out of, again, something like an 800S or something that, you know, may need tubes or something to get it going. This does not. It's effortless in the sound reproduction. It's effortless in how easy it is to drive. And quite honestly, the comfort on my head is effortless as well. So I really think Austrian Audio did a great job with their first foray into a premium high-end headphone, and I could see many people gravitating towards this and picking it up. All right, guys, with that, please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video if you did like this video. And guys, I am heading to Can Jam soon, and I will be doing a live stream with Bree, so definitely check that one out as well. I thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next one.